My name is Joseph Applegarth. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Joseph Applegarth. I am a Christian journalist providing intriguing and controversial journals from a Christian perspective. My video productions are nonprofit, non-monetized, and philanthropically bestowed. They are for the noble purpose of research, edification via education. Feel free to share these broadcasts. We must all bear in mind that as an individual, a family member, and a citizen, our number one responsibility to both God and man is to be a fair and impartial juror when arbitrating over a debate. This is a new series called You Are the Juror, Therefore You Decide. The title of today's broadcast is The Time Has Come to Hold Law Enforcement and the Court System to a Higher Standard. The subject matter that we will examine in today's gripping broadcast is rife on the internet. Thousands of websites, books, journals, and video documentaries have already evinced the material herein. Many of these stalwart advocates of justice are former judges, lawyers, and police officers. For example, the world-renowned defense lawyer Jerry Spence, who has never lost a case, Judge Anna Von Reitz, Judge Joe Brown, Judge Janine, Justice Scalia, and Justice Berger, to name a few. I have visited with judges, lawyers, and members of law enforcement who left this lucrative field because of its infamy in today's modern world. I have visited with retired sheriffs and chiefs of police who told me that they are frightened of this new deranged generation of militarized, sadistic, and torturous police officers. Therefore, with that germane and cogent prelude, let us address the sadistic, perverted, and despotic nature of modern law enforcement and its illicit marriage to the corrupt court system. We must begin with the fact that everything imaginable in today's modern world has been corporatized, hence incorporated. In a word, debauched, hence dehumanized. Rapacious corporations now despotically run the entire planet. This shocking reality is expounded upon in the 2012 movie called Branded, The Invasion Has Begun. Its title implies brand names, of which represent avarice corporations. The movie and a litany of similar ones expose the fact that rapacious and despotic corporations effectuate methods of propaganda, mind control, and chemical manipulations, hence witchcraft, to enslave people financially, which is the satanic version of capitalism, but also implemented in communism, its evil twin. The movies are endless that expose the unprincipled, unabashed, and inexorable proclivity of unmitigated corporate greed. It is all enigmatically effectuated through marketing, hence advertising. Strangely, it is all hiding in plain sight with full disclosure, but most people are too mentally stolid or distracted to notice it. Therefore, it prospers because of their willful ignorance. The government itself is now a corporation with a Dun and Bradstreet number, therefore comprised by a consortium of international investors, hence stockholders. Law enforcement and the court system are 2 out of the thousands vying for profit and hiding their insidious theft under the deceptive guise of safety and public service. But what it is in reality, by merit of definition, is a self-serving parasitic gang that preys off of the ignorance of the misled citizenry. Fortunately, it is being exposed by a host of whistleblowing websites nowadays. How else can you describe a pack of corporate gang members that maraud, hence prowl around like inveterate, bloodthirsty hunters to issue citations to productive people for inconsequential, hence frivolous, so-called infractions for contravening capricious, hence fluctuating speed limits? For example, driving 5 miles per hour over the prescribed speed limit when a year later the same speed limit is increased by 10 miles per hour. How does this evil corporation of law enforcement and its evil spouse, the court system, justify stealing 2 days or 3 days worth of a citizen's hard-earned wages for such an insignificant, hence minor peccadillo? I reiterate, they use safety as their phony excuse, hence modus operandi of deception. Traffic tickets have created a multi-billion-dollar revenue industry in America. Let us delve deeper. In most cases involving speed disparities in certain areas, namely essential roadways, this insidious system, comprised by interdependent corporations, for example, law enforcement and its codependent bedfellow, the court system, of which is aided and abetted by the Department of Transportation, will select an essential area of travel, and they will artificially set the speed limit so awkwardly low that it is irritatingly unnatural to drive that slow. For example, they will set a speed limit to 25 miles per hour in an area that should be 65 miles per hour. You get the point. They will then place their venal, unprincipled, order-following, militarized minions, in other words, their corporate gang members, on site to monitor, hence scrutinize, the speed of vehicles. This constitutes an illegal and unlawful speed trap. They perpetrate this unconscionable fraud knowing that the average person will drive faster than what is posted, and, in most cases, these gang members will purposely either obscure the speed limit signs by placing them in confusing, hence distracting areas, so that they will likely go unseen, or have them sparsely placed so that this coterie of evil can parasite off of the vulnerability of unwitting drivers and issue them promiscuous speeding citations, which is theft via the color of law as described in Black's Law Dictionary. The color of law fraud is a felony committed by government and now corporations, of which are now one and the same in the modern world. The only option they give their hapless victim is to contest the specious citation in its kangaroo court system, which also parasites off the same extortion revenue. This is, by virtue of maxim, a stacked deck, hence fraud. Most people would rather ride a rodeo bull and risk permanent injury or even death than to be intimidated in that arrogant, malevolent, hence trepid arena, where a paragon citizen can end up going to prison over a mere parking ticket. Today's prisons are filled with many innocent people because of such egregious injustices and incommensurate draconian punishments. Does that sound like a corporation that espouses public safety, justice, and equity? Does that sound like freedom/rights? The answer is an emphatic no. It is a greedy, vampiric corporation that has irrefutably and empirically proven its malintent as it unconscionably steals, hence sanguinates, the life force/energy from its unfortunate victims. In candid terms, it is satanic. Paradoxically, even Satan worshippers abhor this intolerable system of unrepentant vexation, and even they fall prey to its indiscriminate, cannibalistic, wanton tyranny. Corporations are independent banks and have their own shareholders and endemic rules and regulations, of which are called policies. Many corporate policies are similar, but some vary in many ways. Many times these capricious, tenuous, and ephemeral policies are deceptively touted as law. We need to bear in mind that law enforcement is not a unified system. It is composed of many competitive agencies, all of which are corporate competitors vying for the same dollar, and sometimes they clash with rival agencies like a battle of the titans, and they will inflict harm to the other. Let me expatiate. For example, a police department represents a city and is the most common version of law enforcement. Coming in second place are sheriff's departments, of which represent counties and bear puissance, hence superiority. Then comes the highway patrol, a state's version of law enforcement. After that, it parlays up to the federal level. For example, the FBI, ATF, federal marshals, Homeland Security, and the list goes on, all of which are by no means united, even on the federal level, and many of them clash with one another. How interesting. My wife and I experienced an intimidating encounter with a sheriff's deputy while driving through a small town. He was marauding about like that of a tenacious hunter, seeking whom he may prey upon for the selfish and perfidious purpose of revenue grabbing. After all, he is a proletariat, hence a corporate employee. He is an obsequious order follower, sycophantically trying to curry the favor of his proletariat master. Keep in mind that not a one of these corporate minions have the intrinsic fortitude, hence virtue, required to be an entrepreneur, hence self-employed. They are all mind-controlled order followers, otherwise they would be self-employed, which is the very opposite. This enslaved state is referred to in the famous Beatles song titled Nowhere Man, which means that a person who has no voice. An entrepreneur, hence a self-employed person, has a prominent voice, and their voice is heard, and it bears much sway in society. There is nobody to fire them for speaking out. It is a great insult for a proletariat to try to lord themselves over an entrepreneur. The rogue deputy noticed that we had out-of-state license plates, and thus vulnerable, hence easy prey. He turned on his ostentatious red and blue emergency lights to make a big scene, to exhibit his power, authority, hence despotic control. He approached our vehicle and immediately accosted my wife, indicting her for speeding, and he made a big vociferous deal about it. He was a real creep. He did not allow us to speak, moreover, question his opprobrious motive. He feloniously issued us a speeding citation when we were clearly not speeding. After all, who is the judge going to side with? You get the point. We were well aware of his insidious speed trap. It met all the criteria that constitutes one. Despite that fact, he followed us for several miles, hoping that he could impugn some kind of spurious charge against us, and when he exhausted all options, he then just manufactured one. The highway was empty and had very little traffic on it for most of the day, resulting from COVID restrictions during that time. Are you starting to see the picture? He was disappointed when we did not pusillanimously write him out a check on the spot like a recreant coward. Later that evening, after we returned home, we filed for a court date in that county to challenge his fraud against us. During the stop, he acted like he would abuse us or incarcerate us if we were to even question his authoritarian theft. In fact, like an odious coward, he hid his facial identity from us the entire time. Therefore, we were under the impression that he was a criminal impersonating a member of law enforcement, of which is common these days. Many times these criminals are caught in the act when they inadvertently pull over a legitimate member of law enforcement while they are driving to work in their personal car. Therefore, I contacted the sheriff in that county and placed both an oral and a written complaint about his rogue deputy. But the sheriff vehemently defended the unprincipled miscreant. Imagine that. I also contacted the county attorney, and she also defended his aberrant actions like a nepotistic crime syndicate working in concert. She mendaciously claimed that he followed protocol and acted professionally. During the discovery process, hence the pretrial investigation portion, when I was requesting facts relating to the case, which she is obligated to answer, she expediently contacted the judge and had him write me a menacing letter stating that I could not participate in any matter regarding the court case, and only my wife could represent herself solely. Or she could hire a Machiavellian public defender, also known these days as the public pretender, who invariably feign to be your advocate while insidiously working for the prosecutor behind your back to purposely thwart the case. Some defense lawyers will do the same in an exchange for favors. What we also observe in today's malicious court system is corrupt judges suppressing any or all the evidence that the defense offers and striking pertinent testimony from the record that would fortify the defense. The judge often grants a sustentation to every frivolous objection that the prosecutor makes, and the wily prosecutor objects to most of what the defense tries to establish, therefore stymieing any possibility of a fair defense. In most cases, the duplicitous judge and miscreant prosecutor work in concert with one another, thus making certain that there is no defense whatsoever. The independent defense lawyer is the only one in the entire lot that is truly self-employed. All the judges and the vast majority of lawyers work for the corporation as mere order-following proletariats, thus no different than members of law enforcement, hence the police. There are no independent, self-employed people in any corporation. This unsettling racket is common in today's unprincipled court system, and moreover society in general. Corporations are despotic in nature, and fascism was born from the corporate archetype. As you can deduce, it is a kangaroo court system, and all of these duplicitous, hence perfidious actors are proverbial bedfellows sharing the revenue that they garner as a team. This abhorrent system has become irredeemable. Consequently, this is why it is essential to establish a competitive court system that is in direct competition, hence at enmity, with the Bar Association. This new system would prohibit any member of the bar from entering its gates. This gives the vulnerable citizen a bona fide choice of venue. The judge would be elected as a constitutional de jure judge, having no corporate ties whatsoever. This would put a stop to this infamous, corrupt system of injustice perpetrated by the members of the bar, which is an acronym meaning the British Accreditation Registry, which is a foreign corporation. In early American history, they were prohibited from practicing law or holding any office in the states. Therefore, the question arises, why are they in control of the court system nowadays? How strange is that? Here is a letter that I wrote to the Attorney General of the state where the rogue deputy issued my wife a specious speeding citation. It is as follows. Law enforcement is under scrutiny in the year 2021, namely because of police abuse and criminal actions perpetrated by unscrupulous members of law enforcement. There are now multiple websites addressing this problem. They identify, hence expose, these rogue, hubris, and perfidious wretches. The citizens are terrified of law enforcement these days, resulting from this loathsome corruption, hence lack of probity. The majority of citizens have either watched the egregious actions of law enforcement on news stations or experienced police abuse themselves. One of the main reasons why Joe Biden took the presidency in the year 2021 was because of his campaign promise to address this crisis and crack down on law enforcement. Therefore, changes are now being made nationwide to improve public relations regarding police interactions with the public. Another unsettling phenomenon arising is criminals impersonating law enforcement, namely in robbery attempts. In most cases, the criminal hides his identity from his victims. My wife and I encountered the same type of situation regarding an imprudent deputy sheriff in December of 2020 during a traffic stop. We could draw no other conclusion, and consequently, I filed a grievance complaint against this deputy because he purposely hid his identity from us and thus fit the description of an impersonator. He was unsettlingly assertive, accusatory, authoritarian, and would not allow us the opportunity to speak. An obvious pattern, modus operandi, of which he developed to prosper his revenue-grabbing machinations. He accused us of speeding on a stretch of highway that had no visible speed limit signs, of which constitutes an insidious, hence unlawful, speed trap. The enumerated policies are in desperate need of being established, requiring all members of law enforcement to comply. They are as follows. Number 1, identification. The members of law enforcement must be required to identify themselves in a clear and unequivocal manner, both orally and facially. They need to make their face clear to identify in the driver's window and to make sure that the driver can always hear their voice during discourse. Number 2, benign representatives. The members of law enforcement must demonstrate an affable and professional demeanor, hence the very opposite of an implacable martinet despot representing a police state/martial law. Number 3, credential requirements. The members of law enforcement must be required to give the driver a business card with essential information listed on it, namely contact information, to ensure the wary driver that the officer is a bona fide member of law enforcement. Number 4, legibility. The tickets/citations that they write out must be legible, demonstrating good penmanship. Number 5, agency representation. The law enforcement agency responsible for the ticket needs to be clearly stated, thus identifiable at the top of the page. Number 6, exploitation prohibited. The members of law enforcement must be prohibited from issuing citations for the ignoble purpose of revenue grabbing regarding frivolous traffic infractions, and especially in speed trap areas where speed signs are sparse and the speed limit is set artificially, hence unnaturally low. This insidious snare is mainly used and perpetrated against drivers who have out-of-county or out-of-state license plates because they are the most vulnerable. Number 7, stalking prohibited. The members of law enforcement must be prohibited from marauding, hence stalking drivers like a tenacious hunter on the prowl, preying upon the slightest traffic infractions. For example, following a driver for 2 or 3 miles in an officious and captious manner to quickly accuse and cite the driver of the following: driving too fast or too slow, encroaching the yellow or white line, engaging the blinker either too soon or too late, slightly swerving, and the list is endless. Whenever a member of law enforcement issues a citation, the hapless recipient will either pay a fine or be importuned to appear in court. These are the only 2 options given, and they are equally taxing and pose needless dangers to the unfortunate recipients thereof. With the current state of the economy, such a dilemma could cause a hapless citizen to become homeless. Most citations issued are unnecessary and resulted from captious nitpicking. They place a horrible burden on benign paragon citizens, while real criminals and their nefarious crimes proceed unnoticed and unimpeded. As you can deduce, these are essential improvements. Please enact these 7 principles/policies to ensure the public of safety, justice, and equity, thus concluding the letter. In closing, my Christian brethren, the information expressed in today's broadcast is fomenting nationwide and globally. The citizens are at their wits' end. This situation is intolerable. Many judges, lawyers, and members of law enforcement are also frustrated, hence sick and tired of this pernicious, defunct system of abject evil. No citizen should ever have to fear law enforcement and its despicable partner in crime, the court system, over that of a deranged serial killer. No citizen should ever have to fear leaving their home with unnerving angst that they might be selected and victimized by this unconscionable, lethal cabal. This white-collar crime syndicate has degenerated to a state that is worse than full-blown communism. It is the road to perdition, hence hell. The patience of the people has expired. This tyrannical system must be changed. Fortunately, for our own sakes, this reprobate system can be changed, but it will require effort. The key is effective and decorous communication. As Jesus said, "You have not because you ask not." The remedy is that simple. Therefore, please take the time to write or call your elected officials and express your concern about this intolerable injustice, and plead for the changes prescribed in this broadcast so that there will be liberty and justice for all. Bear in mind that grievance complaints via written petitions are more effective. And first and foremost, pray to our Heavenly Father that this current system of Baal/Satan will collapse for all of our sake. Thank you for joining me in today's broadcast. I have brought before your attention the ubiquitous concerns burgeoning on the internet. Always bear in mind that you are ultimately the juror. Therefore, you decide.